Hello, this is Ryan Knaggs from RyanKnaggsMusic.com. Today we're going to talk about a topic that I can't seem to find anywhere on the internet about, and it was something that I really needed. It's to be able to do a zoom feature and use the knobs that are on a MIDI controller. We all know about G and H used in Cubase to zoom in and out, but I wanted to do it with a MIDI controller for vertical, horizontal, and vertical horizontal at the same time. So that'd be three different knobs. And I couldn't find anywhere in Cubase to do it. So I wrote my own script doing this. But along the way, I learned how to program JavaScript and create these custom scripts for doing these special things in Cubase that you normally can't do. Sure, there's mapping and everything, there's nothing wrong with that. But when it comes to more involved stuff that requires logic and conditions, you need to write these special scripts to do it with. And the thing is I couldn't find any information out there really good enough to just do it. So I had to figure it out on my own. I'm going to show you the process and how to do this yourself. And at the end of this particular video, you're going to be able to download the code that I have available on my website and integrate it into Cubase so that you can take any MIDI surface that you have with the knobs, or maybe if you want to change to a fader, and you'll be able to do those things and have it zoom in and out vertically, horizontally, and horizontally at the same time. And so it's something that I've been wanting to do for, I don't know, a couple of months now, and I finally finished it, and it's nice. I think you'll like it. And you know, this will hopefully help you along the way to understand how to write other very cool scripts that do special things in Cubase. It's the only DAW that I know of that does these things, to write special scripts with. Other DAWs out there don't seem to have it. I mean, I've been a Logic user for over 11 years, and it didn't seem to have any custom scripting like this. So without further ado, let's begin. Okay, you ready for this? Here we go. All right, I'll go through it in a series of steps. Let's just start off with a clean slate. We'll open up Cubase. We'll create a MIDI controller, just like you've seen on many other videos. And again, this video is not about that. This video is to get you to write a custom script that listens to your MIDI controller and does special things with conditions and so forth that Cubase normally can't do. Okay, for the sake of things, let's go ahead and create a new empty project. And I'll put it in a folder on my desktop called My Cubase Projects. And I'll open it here. Okay, so clean slate. All right, so the first thing we want to do is we want to say, all right, I want to hook up this Cubase to a new MIDI surface or MIDI controller. Before we go into the scripting part, let's create our controller the same way that you've seen on other videos. Okay, so step one, go ahead and click here on the plus, and we'll select a vendor. And in this case, I have a Novation, so I'm going to select the Novation from the list. Now, I understand that there's other controllers out there that aren't on the list. You just have to select, more than likely, you need to add a vendor. But since I already have a vendor, I'll just call it Novation. The second thing is like, what model do I have? This is the launch key. This is the launch control XL, which is not on my list. So I'm going to go ahead and add the model. And I'll call it that. And I'll say launch control XL. And let me just hit tab. It finds my name. Great. Okay. Now I'm going to select the ports. And since I'm going to launch control XL, there's also a Huey mode for compatibility with Mackie controllers, but I don't need that in this case. I'm going to use the CC on this controller, and it's going to work just fine. So I'll just select Launch Control XL. We're going to start off by creating a controller but not really focus on creating a controller the graphical user way. We're going to create a controller using JavaScript. But there's a little catch with this particular setup. We have to at least put one item inside the MIDI remote surface right here on the page in order for Cubase to save it that way. Otherwise, it won't save. And so as we go along, you'll see what I'm talking about. So we're at the stage right now where I'm going to put one knob on this page right here. So we got our cursor already lined up. All I'm going to do, what we're going to do is we're going to twist one of the knobs, which is the very far upper left-hand corner knob, to have it put a knob over on the MIDI remote surface that you see on Cubase. So give it a twist. You see our knob appear. The next step that you see right here is the mapping assistant. You can assign that knob to make it do anything you want within Cubase. That's something that I've seen on countless videos out there on the internet. What they don't really tell you is how to write a custom JavaScript application and have it do certain things that Cubase normally can't do. So we could talk about the mapping assistant later on, but I want to focus now on setting up your environment with the right tools that you need to create a JavaScript application that's going to go in there and listen to the knob that you're twisting and have it do something with the zoom feature. And it's something that Cubase normally can't do unless you press the G or the H key, which is great and all. But for me, like, the reason why I'm showing you this video is I'm all about automation. And another thing I like is workflow. And for me to go in and work on my music project and be able to twist a knob really fast to zoom in and zoom out is a real big help. So we're going to concentrate on that next. And I'm going to show you how to set up your integrated development environment, which is called an IDE, using Microsoft Visual Studio Code, and some other things that Cubase has for debugging and displaying the data that you're working with on your custom scripts for your MIDI surface. So the next part I'm going to talk about is setting up the environment. When setting up your environment using Cubase in your MIDI surface, using JavaScript, there's a document out there that comes inside of Cubase. I couldn't find it on the Steinberg site, but it's available on your DAW. And so let me show you how to get to it first. So you come over here and click on the cog, and you select Scripting Tools. You make sure it's checked, and when you check it, over in this area, it'll show 5 more icons. There they are. Now, what are these icons for? Well, this is, like I said, this is more an advanced development thing that anybody can really do if they just take the time and practice it a little bit. So the first one right here, which we'll talk about, is reloading your scripts. So after you build a script and you want to re-execute it, you press this button. This right here will open up it's a scripting console. It's like a terminal. It's telling you what scripts are running, and it's showing you the output of these scripts if you wish to show the output. The error messages tab is supposed to show you if there's any problems with your code, and it'll show you the error right away and what line it's on, and then you can go in and correct it within your IDE, your integrated development environment. Okay, and in this case, like I said, we're going to use Microsoft Visual Studio Code for it. I'm going to get to that in a minute. Okay. Log messages is the same thing, really. It's showing you all the messages that are being outputted from your script. That's really about it. That's what this is for. And it's probably going to be used 80% of the time when you're writing your scripts, or maybe even more. The next icon we're going to talk about is where the driver scripts are located. The scripts that you're going to write to make Cubase behave the way you want it to behave with custom scripts of your own. Okay. To get to it, they made it easy. Steinberg put a nice little icon right here, and it's a folder looking icon. You give it a click. It opens up your window, either in Macintosh or Windows, and in there are the scripts. And so what we'll do is we will focus on the area called local novation. And we'll focus on that in a minute. I'm not going to talk about it right now. I want to finish the icons. The next icon we're going to talk about is the actual MIDI remote API, application programming interface. Okay, this is where you're going to collectively gather all your information that you need to be able to write your scripts in reference to things and basically understand what this is all about. The MIDI remote API is a guide that Steinberg created, and they actually integrated it into the digital audio workstation for Cubase. I couldn't find it on their website. I couldn't find it anywhere on Google. It was only here. And it was hard to find. It was just like, well, it's kind of a strange thing to put it over here as a file. Usually you'd probably put it on the website, and then people can access it and do whatever they want. They can update it and have a good time with it, but they just put it right here. So inside this guide, you know, you got your contents over here that you can select to jump to the particular topic. But what we're going to do is just cover the installation of things right now. We're at the point where we want to install our integrated development environment, which is Microsoft Visual Studio Code. And we'll do that next. And I'll just skip part of this document for now, and we'll come back to it later. But I just want to show you where it is, because it really is a vital part of your development of these scripts. The last one is an icon that actually takes you to the show surface rectangles. And in this case, we only have one rectangle that goes to the knob that we generated earlier in this video. Okay. But that, in a sense, is everything at this point to what we need to do to start off with this surface. Let's focus on installing Visual Studio Code. Go to your browser, open up code.visualstudio.com, and then here's the site. And it's as easy as just saying, I want to download Visual Studio Code. It's free. It's probably the best integrated development environment I've ever used. And it's free, like I said. So I'll select Mac because I'm on a Mac. And then you just download it. And there it is. It's downloading. And you install it the way you normally would install it on a Mac or a Windows machine or a Linux machine. And then when that step is complete, then we'll go to the next step, which is running Visual Studio Code. And I've already set up my Visual Studio Code to point to that directory structure, which is right here, that has driver scripts, and it has our local, and it has our public. Okay, we won't be focusing on public. Okay, there's a README document and everything. We're going to only focus on local. And just as a rule of thumb right now, anytime you are working with this, always put your scripts in the local directory, not in public. Because if you do, public will rewrite that public directory and all your scripts will go away. Trust me, I know, I've done it. Okay, so now, remember before how we created this wheel? This knob? Okay, well that is a file that is stored in the local directory. It's called Novation, which is the manufacturer name. Remember how we gave it a model name? Launch Control XL. Go in there, and there's a file. Now, this is not a script file per se. This is a file that is a little different. This is a JSON file. Now, what is a JSON file? A JSON file basically is sort of like a script. It's describing to Cubase that there's a knob there, and it's also connected up to my Surface controller over here, my MIDI Surface controller, and it's programmed to go to the first knob on the top left-hand corner. To make the knob that you see right here move back and forth based upon me twisting the knob on the controller. Okay, so that's what this is for. And probably some other things that need to be done in order for Cubase to communicate properly to the MIDI surface that I have from Novation. That's great. And of course, if we were to add more stuff here, knobs, buttons, switches, dials, whatever you want, that list over here would grow. And it's a great start. And then also, setting up your maps, oh, when I press this button, I want the toolbar to show. And when I press this button, I want it to record something that I'm playing back on my piano in my DAW. Or, just a lot of different things that you can map, buttons and faders and things like that, graphically with Cubase. And that's great. And it works fantastic. A lot of videos I've seen that do it. That's this file right here. Okay. But we have another file that we are going to talk about. And that is a file that I'm going to import into my Visual Studio Code. For the sake of time, I already created a script that's going to do all this stuff for the zoom and everything. For those who are a little bit more techy, it's a JavaScript ES5 language, not ES6. Okay, in the case of what we're doing next, to save time, I've already pre-written a JavaScript application that's going to do all the zoom effects and everything that we want it to do with my MIDI surface by twisting the knobs. Okay, and again, like I said, this is not a feature you can find in Cubase. In Cubase, you have to hit the key command like G and H will zoom in and zoom out, or you could use the mouse, and there's a command key and a mouse wheel. You can do things like that. At the end of the day, it's all about automation. Okay, I just want to be able to write music. I just want to go into Cubase, do my thing, twist the knob here, zoom in, do something, zoom out fast. I don't want to sit there and try to figure out moving the mouse over to a little slider on the graphical user interface or that. I like shortcut keys, which I talk about in another video, because at the end of the day, all I want to do is write music. Okay, let's just focus on getting our script put into Cubase so that we can see it work. Now, I've already pre-written the script. It's a zoom in and zoom out script for vertical, horizontal, and both vertical and horizontal. The zoom script is just one of many that you can write. I just want to get you an idea of how to set up your environment for this, how to use it, what the language looks like, how things work, and what to avoid. I'm going to go in and import this file. It was a file that I already wrote. I'm going to copy it over to the same location where the JSON file lives. What we have right now is a single dial. Okay, what I'm going to do is open up the script tools and look for the MIDI remote script console. And when I refresh the scripts, when I reload the scripts, it's going to load in our new JavaScript file, and it's going to change the way this interface looks. And we're going to go in and explain why. Okay. Now you notice it's got one big knob and two little knobs. That's because the JavaScript file is trying to draw the extra knobs and other logic it's doing behind the scenes into that same space where we already created our knob. We don't really want the big knob. We just needed that there so that Cubase would save that surface, that virtual surface. Otherwise it wouldn't save. So what I'll do first is I'm going to go into the JSON file and I'm going to disable this first knob here. Okay, for those who just installed Visual Studio Code, it's as simple as this. You can just get rid of the welcome thing and go to your file right up here, click on Open Folder, and you'll need to hunt for the scripts folder that we talked about before. You go to Documents, and it'll say Steinberg. Inside Steinberg, you go over to Cubase. In Cubase, you go over to MIDI Remote. Inside of MIDI Remote, you're going to go over to Driver Scripts. And then inside of Driver Scripts, you're going to go to Local. But let's put it at the level of Driver Scripts, and we'll hit Open. There's our JSON file that we talked about before, and our new addition, which is the Launch Control XL.js file. We'll get to that in a minute. Let's just jump over here and look. So I know it's a knob. There's only one knob. There's only one. See, it says 1 of 1. I'm just going to simply comment out the code, save it, and then when I go back and I hit reload, watch what happens to this interface below. There. These 3 knobs are programmatically being set up from JavaScript into Cubase. There's no grabbing and dragging and dropping and doing all that cool stuff that you saw before in other videos. This is raw code making those knobs appear that way. Let's jump into the code and look at that. That's this file that we brought in from our desktop. And what I'm going to do is share a link with you. It should be at the bottom of the YouTube video. I'll also put it on the video itself where you can get the source code for this and the JSON file and also the MIDI mapper, which we'll explain in a minute. Okay. All right. Now, I'll go into this pretty briefly, but yet it's better to explain this and have you understand one thing. And that one thing is this. There's 3 things that you need to think about when you're writing a script. Okay, driver setup, surface layout, and host mapping. What does that mean? Well, the driver setup is pretty straightforward. It's like you're accessing a library that's already pre-built of things that you can access to make your script a script for you to communicate between your MIDI surface and Cubase. Okay. The second thing, which is the surface layout lets you add a knob, add a fader, add a button, and do those things graphically that you saw on the screen right here, these 3 different knobs that I put in here. And the third thing is host mapping. Now, like I said, other videos will show you how to map your MIDI surface to some sort of function in Cubase, which is really handy, and it's all graphically done, and you don't have to write a stitch of code. But in this situation, we're doing something that's really custom, and it requires you to understand these 3 steps. Now, I looked at it at first, and I thought, okay, all right, so this is what they're talking about: driver setup, surface layout, and host mapping, and how everything relates to everything. Here's where we talk about Visual Studio Code. And what you're going to like about Visual Studio Code is that for those who are somewhat not a programmer, is they have these helper menu functions. Let's say as you're developing and you hit the dot symbol, because it's all object-oriented programming, it comes up with a little list of other things that says, oh, you want to work with this object, and oh, here are the functions for this object. Okay, we talked about the path and where the path is located. We also talked about how to access the scripting tools that I mentioned over here, which is right here. Okay, and make sure you're in MIDI remote, and that's what we are here. We're in MIDI remote. We have our scripting tools turned on. I talked about all the different things that those icons do. Okay, the next step, here's the pathing, by the way. That's nice in case you need a reference to that. And then, here's your JavaScript's IDE, which is Visual Studio Code. And inside of Visual Studio Code, it looks like this right here. And inside of there, we have JavaScripts, and it's got the API, and this is the stuff that you don't need to touch, but this is a part of the development. Your stuff is all going to be inside of this local directory under the manufacturer and the device itself, and I called it manufacturer_device.js. It's really important that you call it that. For example, if you created the MIDI interface graphically, and you said, "Oh, it's Novation," or it's a Mackie, or and then you put the Mackie version of the product, which might be the Mackie 123 or something like that. It will generate a file name called Mackie underscore this. In my case, it's Novation underscore Launch Control XL, and it created that JSON file. And then I created a JS file with the same exact naming convention, but I just put a .js after it. This is to get your application to be read in by Cubase and launched. That's the only way it works. If you change it to my first program.js, it won't read it. It won't work. So these two names have to match. Okay. Now I'm inside the JavaScript program, and you'll see here that the first thing is go get me the library so I can program against. Okay. The second thing is create me a device driver based upon certain things that the JavaScript knows about, based upon this command right here. See, they match. And then here's another important thing you must do, otherwise this script will not work. You need to say Novation, just like here, Novation, Launch Control XL, Launch Control XL, and then of course your name. Try to keep things consistent and matched, otherwise it won't work. The next thing is just standard input and output that comes with any script, so that you can get your data in and your data out. This is another command that is necessary for the script to run and to read in your input and output based upon your surface that you have, or MIDI controller. Okay. And then this is just something I put in. It's just saying, hey, the program really started and I'm ready to go, and you can put a message there, or you can have it go and do something else that make it, make some sort of command that makes it do something else. That's there. And then you'll see these comments right here. These come from the sample layouts that you'll see. And in my case, I have 3 knobs. I have a horizontal knob, I have a vertical knob, and I have a horizontal and vertical knob. This is just a variable to check things with. This is a page setup. Now, where that gets initiated is if I were to click here, there it is. You see how it says default right here? Well, that's coming from here. I could change it to Ryan's Wonderful Page, and it will say Ryan's Wonderful Page. Or you might have multiple pages that do different things. You might have a page that does zoom effects, and then if you switch the page, it might do other cool stuff for Cubase that you normally can't do within a regular mapping type of script. Then you need a custom script for it. So you can do multiple pages here, and there would be a drop down of more if I had more pages here. That's what that's for. And then I set up some special logic to control the command itself that I'm trying to put together. I call it zoom in variable, zoom out variable, and then for horizontal, so zoom in H variable, zoom out H variable, zoom in V variable for vertical. Okay, so those are all set, and then I go and I set up a command to. Then I set up a command to say, hey, what do I want to do with the with this zoom in and zoom out variable that I set up here? And I say I want to use the zoom feature, and I want to zoom in, or I want to zoom out. And I did the same thing for vertical as well here too. That's why this is here. The next thing I had here was this create a command zoom H knob. And that's a function call that goes right here to this guy. And there's 3 function calls. And then what I'm doing is I'm passing in the variable that you had up here into the function along with the knob that I built right up here. Because I created 3 knobs. Those 3 knobs are these 3 knobs right here. And their X and Y positioning and their width and height position and size. So that's what this is. Define me those 3 knobs, and then I want to bind these knobs to something that we'll talk about in a minute. A binding is just setting up an event listener. So anytime I twist that knob, it's gonna send out an event to something that's gonna listen for it, and it's gonna react to it. And we'll talk about that soon. Hold on. Let's just talk about it now. Let's talk about the horizontal knob that I have set up. This is passing in the commands that we're going to use that we defined up here. Okay, so basically, if I twist the knob, after a while it might get out of skew and it won't go back to home base where everything is completely zoomed out. So I put in a failsafe where basically, I'll just say it this way. As I'm zooming, you see where it says 1 and 17, 33, 49? And if I zoom in, it becomes more refined. 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, 2, so here's your beats per bar. I mean, your bars, and then the beats inside the bar. So the problem was, is over a period of time, it wouldn't go back to 1. And so what I did is I made it so that you can zoom all the way as far as you can go to the right, and you twist it all the way to the right clockwise, and on my controller, the knob won't go any further. Some of them just keep spinning, which makes it great. But in this situation, I had to put in that code so that it'll reset itself. And it goes back to 1. Okay. Anyway, that's what this code was for. Or it's simple logic. Where am I at? Is the number that I at greater than the previous number that I was before? If it is, then it knows to zoom in. If it's a number that's less than the number it was before, zoom out. And then I just set that value right here. And that gets set initially right here. So I do that function 3 separate times. There's 3 functions here. Horizontal, vertical, and horizontal and vertical all in one. So let's see it in action. Okay, so I'm just going to go over here to the horizontal wheel. Look at that. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, and then we got vertical. Nice stuff. And then we also have both horizontal and vertical. I don't know, just why not, right? It's there. I wrote it. That's the way I want it. So that's what these 3 functions do based upon this script. Okay. And like I said, the script, this is all shown within the script. The JSON file itself still exists. I just left it there. The only thing I commented it out was this piece of code for the wheel, for the knob that was originally showing there, that we drew in. But it's not necessary because I'm using the script now. Now, one caveat that I need to explain to you right now is if things are not working right, the script is not working at all for some reason. I had this problem where when I was developing with Cubase, the script wouldn't work. And so I'd simply save where I'm at, exit Cubase, restart Cubase, and continue on, and then the script started to work. Okay? Please remember that. The next thing I'm going to show you is debugging an output. Okay, well, first of all, what you need to launch is your script console right here. And on the script console, you'll see all messages showing here, error messages, and log messages. Log messages and all messages kind of do the same thing, so don't worry about it. Just clear it if you want. You can even go like this. You can say reload scripts. You can clear it just by right mouse clicking on the window. Now, so I'll just refresh here. I'm going to jump over to the IDE, Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to create a syntax error. All right, let's do this. I'll take those two things out, save it, and then now when I launch this, it still looks like it works, but hey, my stuff is gone. You're like, oh no. Okay, if you scroll up, syntax error on line 40. Okay, there's another easier way. Just go over here to this filter. It tells you right now, syntax error, because you might have more than one. Reload. Well, it's only going to do one. So if I fix that one, the next one is going to show, and that's just the way it works. So let's put these back the way it was and relaunch our script, and bam, everything's back. Here's our script running. Okay, all messages here. Novation launch control XL.js file is running. That's good. Okay, now I can still do my same thing. Ooh, look at that. That's the zoom feature for you. I guess you could do that too, but it's mainly for the main event timeline in this, and then we got there. So everything's fine. Everything's working just the way it's supposed to. Okay, so that was one thing I wanted to show is that. But what about output? Now I'm going to go back to the code. Now in JavaScript they have what they call event listeners. Event listeners for mouse clicks and doing things within JavaScript. It's also an event listener for MIDI, CC, knobs, faders, buttons, you name it. It listens to that stuff too, and it reacts to it. Now, in my program, over here in this function right here for horizontal, I wrote a little math algorithm because originally it was set to do decimal places and it had the long numbers at the end of it, and it wouldn't work right. So I just converted it to go anywhere from 0 to 100, and that's it. That's what this math floor value 1 times 100 is for. Let's concentrate on putting some output. Now, in JavaScript, you can do a console log or console error, and there's other consoles that you can do. I'm going to just say hash value, and it's ES5. We can't do commas, we have to do pluses, and we're going to say NV for a new value. That's why I called it NV. It was value 1 times 100 in math floor, and it's now NV for new value. And we're going to print it out. What does that look like? Let's find out. Over here, you have to reload the script again for it to be reinitialized. Now we're ready. What does this look like? I'll just go over to log files or log messages, or I can go to all messages, but I'll just do it here. Clear the screen, and let's find out. Look at that. It's displaying a value right here in real time. Look. Goes up to 100, and then it goes back to 0. And so that's really handy, I guarantee it, because this right here is your event listener that we set up. And when you get the code, you'll be able to play with it and understand it better as you play with it. But it creates a function, and that function inputs the knob itself, which is the active device, and its value, what it is currently. And then I take that value, and you can see the math, and then I print it out, and then I do stuff with it. My conditions. Well, if the number is greater than what it was before, then make it go up, which is zoom in. If it's less than what it was before, then zoom out. That's all this logic is doing. And so, a little bit of a learning curve, but like I said, it'll take you maybe a day or two to kind of get more acclimated with it. And you'll be off and writing all kinds of really cool stuff. One more thing I wanted to talk about. Where do they get all my information? Here's the process of me trying to figure out how a new language works, especially when you find nothing on the internet about it. I mean, there was not one website or any other video that I could find that talked explicitly about this topic. It was great. They always talked about how to create a MIDI controller and how you can hook it up to your Surface and do all your maps and everything the GUI way, the graphical user interface way. But I needed something like this for the Zoom feature for myself. There wasn't anything out there. So I put it together myself and I figured it out. I mean, it's just something that you just learn. Anyway, how did I do it? Simple. And I'll show you. The best way for me to figure out how to make this stuff work is, let's say I got make knob. And I come over here and I go to my browser, type in Cubase, make knob. And sure enough, here's one place to go. Most of my stuff that I found on commands was on the Steinberg website in a blog, okay? Not as an instruction set that's inside of a manual that explains pretty much how to do this, where I can get to it really easily and it was readily available. It was other people that were saying, well, hey, I created this and it didn't work, and what do you do to make it work? And some guy goes, I did this. That's how I put it together. It was just little breadcrumbs. And sure enough, over a period of time, I'm like, okay, well, I need a listener. I need an event listener. How do I make that happen? And it was a combination of looking inside the integrated development environment, the IDE, and it had something called, and I'll show you what that was called, on progress value change. And I go, I wonder if that's an event listener. How do I use that? And I just sat there and I copied it. I went over here to Cubase and I typed that in. Oh, you could tell that I've been here before. Once again, guess where I went? On progress value change. Somebody says, oh, it's not executing when you call this. And so somebody wrote back, says, oh, all you have to do is this. And I just copy that in and I try it, just trial and error stuff. Yeah, it was pretty tedious and long, but you know what? I figured it out to write this little Zoom thingy, and now it works. And you know what? That's all there is to it. Just read the blogs and the API. The API was okay. I'm going to jump to the part where they talk about some of the key commands. This is all the stuff we already talked about. This is the sample code. This is how I was able to find those things in the blog. I go, what's make device driver for? What's make knob do? Obviously we know what that's going to do. What about bind control change? That sounds interesting. And then they said, oh, it creates all these neat little controllers and stuff. It's like some of the code in here didn't work. Just didn't. But I was able to understand what they were doing because of the three things that we talked about right here. Driver setup, surface layout, and host mapping. You understand that, you're off to the races. The rest of it is just syntax and code, but you get the idea of how to lay something out to make it do what you want it to do. The last part is just understanding the API. I mean, here's the API. Look at this. Oh, I want to press a button and have it add a MIDI track. Okay, that's fine. Where's that? Add track, MIDI. And look at this. They make it so when you click on it, it copies the snippet to the clipboard. And then I just simply go back into my program. I just put it over here. Do something and, oh, add track MIDI. Boom. And that's a command, and that is something that they talk about, in the example code. So, I mean, and really, there is a ton of stuff. I mean, literally, like, oh, if I want to worry about zoom, look at this. This is all about zoom. And out of this, I figured out that I only wanted to do vertical, and horizontal was zoom out and zoom in, by the way. Vertical was zoom out vertically, zoom in vertically. And then with the combination of those, I did horizontal and vertical with my own little method and things like that. API reference, then they kind of talk about what a host default is. And it's not bad. Like I said, if you're not really a programmer, it might be more of a challenge. Even for me, I've been programming software for over 30 years, even longer than that. But I found this helpful for I'm so glad that they had it. I know JavaScript is a little bit on the old side, but you know what? I'm just glad it's here. Because I'll tell you something, without this feature, it wouldn't be a showstopper for me. But you know what? It's like I'm just glad it's here. I don't know what other DAWs have. I used to be a Logic user. It didn't have it. You couldn't do custom scripting like this, and it's too bad because you know what? I've gone on the internet looking for this type of stuff for Cubase. It's not there. They all talk about how to create a surface graphically, like, you draw your buttons in and you map them to you come over here and I'll just show you. You just double click here and you set up your little wheel here and I'll that one, and I want to go to this function and I want to do this, quick control. Okay, I wanted to also point out one last thing, and that is, let's say you build this on your personal DAW and you have to move it to another DAW that's elsewhere, like at a studio, or maybe across the room like mine. I have another DAW that I use for pre-production. This is more of a post-production environment that I have here for different reasons. But the point is that the script that you created is also transportable. Okay, and how you do that is over here in your user interface. You just simply click on the your surface right here, and then you select Export Script, and then you give it a name. I'll leave it as Novation Launch Control XL, and I'm going to put it in a special. Well, I'll put it in a special folder on my desktop. So I'll click here. Look at my scripts. And inside of my scripts is Novation XL. Now it says MIDI remote. Okay. Now this is important because if you ever see the word import scripts, you can't simply import a JavaScript file or a JSON file. It takes that stuff that's inside that directory that we have over here. It takes these files that we have in this directory structure and it bundles them together, and it creates a binary file that's unreadable, and it makes it so that you can import that file into another Cubase DAW. So what I'll do is I'll just export this file. Boom, that's it. If I come over here to my scripts, there it is. There's the file. Like I said, you go ahead and open it up. I mean, if you really want to see what's inside, this is what it looks like. It's just a bunch of, it's binary. You can't read it. It says Steinberg resource file. Okay. And then you should be able to take that file and import it into a DAW that doesn't have it. Okay, now that we exported the file and you saw what it looks like, Let's clean up Cubase as if it were a fresh installation. The benefit of it is it's just a nice and neat file that you import, and it sets everything up automatically. So first thing I'll do is I'll just launch Cubase. This time I'll create a new project. Okay, so I'll click on Create Empty, and then I'll just put it in the same directory. Okay, so now Cubase is started and we got a fresh new project. Let's re-import that script file and see what happens. I'm just going to quickly add a quick instrument over here. Okay, just a contact instrument. Okay, the next thing I'll do is I'll go to MIDI remote, and you see that there's no scripts running here. And now we're going to click on Import Script. It'll ask you where's the script, so I know I put it on my desktop the last time. I called it My Scripts, and there it is. It's the Novation Launch Control XL MIDI remote script. Just to reiterate, you can't import a JSON or a JavaScript file, which is .js. You'll see them, but you won't be able to click on them and import them. It will only import this MIDI remote file that you previously exported. So I'll click on the Novation Launch Control XL file, hit open, and there it is. This is my controller that I built, that I exported, and I re-imported into another Cubase session that I created here. And there it is. It puts the controller back to the way it was because it's programmatically set up that way using JavaScript. And it was all imported from that one file that I showed you just a second ago. Okay, now that we got the script imported, let's just double check a couple of settings like our input and output port. Let's just make sure it's selected to the Novation Launch Control XL input and output. And then we can say activate controller software. And here we are, back to the way we were. Now I should be able to reach over to the knob for horizontal and see if it will zoom in and zoom out. And it does. Vertical? Yep. And both, vertical and horizontal at the same time. Thank you for taking the time to watch in this video. Yeah, it was a little long, but it had a lot of information in there on how to get you started on writing custom scripting for MIDI surfaces with Cubase. And if you have any questions, just feel free to put your questions and comments below in the comments section on this video presentation. And I wanted to say, you know, if you like the video, give me a thumbs up. If you also would like to subscribe, click on the bell. That was loud. Take care.